Hi everybody, my name is Michael Henning-Pugh. I am the PfA Service Development Manager, Service Development Manager based in Adult Social Care. Here today to give an overview of the PfA offer within Southampton. I'm here with kind of four of my colleagues who are going to come in at various points to talk about some of the offer in a broader sense. I think the main takeaway from this particular presentation is that it's not so much about talking about a PfA service, but actually working cooperatively across agencies and services so that we actually have a whole system approach to actually improving outcomes for young people. So I thought I'd start off with the initial slide just to kind of remind us about where the term came from. And most people are familiar with it. It kind of set out in the SEN reforms back in 2014 and is actually embedded within the SEN Code of Practice, which sets out the statutory duties and responsibilities on local authorities in regards to planning for adulthood for young people. It's centred around the four pillars, four outcome areas of employment, health, community inclusion and living. And some of the talks today will actually cross over some of that to illustrate the fact that it's not just about what's happening in one service, but across the entire system. If people are interested in a good resource around the PfA outcome areas, the NDTI, which is the National Development Team for the Inclusion, had the contract with DfE to actually implement the reforms. And they actually have a wealth of resources and tools on their website, even though they no longer have the contract, which is useful for both young people, parent carers, and professionals alike. Okay? So the main focus within the PfA area is young people who are in sort of national curriculum year 9 to 19, so that's typically age 13 to 25. I thought it'd be quite useful just to give an overview of what the Southampton picture looks like. So as you see on the diagram, you can stand in front of it, in a very narrow definition of PfA, where we're talking about young people with an education, health and care plan in year 9 and above, we have around about 1,035 young people in the city. Okay? But there are also going to be young people that PfA applies to that will be receiving SEN support in their education provision, and there may be still some young people in the wider kind of networking system who, for whatever reason, don't need SEN support or an EHCP, but may be entitled to a kind of character assessment for post-18 and support around their kind of future planning. The other thing to kind of point out is that of this cohort of 1,035, less than 25% are actually known to statutory children's services, so social care teams such as Jigsaw, CWD as they're now called, Pathways Through Care and the other social care teams, which means that there is a significant group of young people who are being supported by their primarily SENCO and sort of plan coordinator and the network of professionals working with them around their individual needs. And for us, that is one of the biggest areas that we need to kind of get to grips with. So again, I'll get over the contextual information and make it a bit more interesting later. But basically, PfA sits within the SEN strategy as priority 6, and that's aligned to the wider children and young people strategy, both of which are 5-year programs. And within priority 6, as a result of the feedback from parent carers, young people, other professionals, a 5-year plan is set out key priorities and outcomes that they want to achieve over the course of the next 5-year period. I'm not going to go through them all individually at this point because I'll come on to the next slide. But in response to the identification of those gaps in provision and also the need to strengthen what we've already got in place, the local authority, both within children's and adult services, have actually set up a Preparing for Adulthood transformation programme, which is a 3-year programme, which is aimed at addressing how we achieve those outcomes and actually strengthen those services. So I think Kate is going to be kind of touching on the area around the extended offer and inclusive lives and possibly independent living as well. I'm kind of responsible for the business intelligence side, which is about making sure that we're making our systems more robust in terms of being able to identify young people in real time across not just the one part of the system I mentioned earlier with the HCPs, but the wider SEN support cohort and those young people that sit outside of that. The other thing that I'm working on with colleagues within both education and within children and adult social care is around ensuring that the operational process and procedures are much more robust. Because going back to one of the kind of priority areas, it was about making sure that every young person has a clear transition plan, but is also done in a timely manner. And we're not in a situation where assessments and plans are being left until the 11th hour, just before the 18th birthday, in order to progress. The other thing to say, the information and guidance, there's an area of work going on around developing, refreshing the local offer web pages, of which there is a PfA web page. And the local offer is a sort of statutory duty, again, within the context of the Senate reforms and the Code of Practice, which will actually be a useful resource for people to refer back to, whether it's PfA or any of the other areas. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be Kirsty. Unfortunately, Kirsty's not able to attend. So Kirsty has been recently appointed in the SEN team, who are responsible for the Education Healthcare Plan assessments and contributing to the reviews of young people. And she's been brought in as a dedicated worker to address some of the challenges that we've identified through the various forms of feedback, but also to kind of take and make the process more robust. So one of the areas that she's focusing on at the moment, having only just arrived at the end of November, is making the annual review process and the EHCP format for young people from year 9 onwards much more compliant with PfA outcome areas. So there's explicit reference to health, employment, community inclusion and independent living, and how the plan and support available to that young person on their journey is available from the range of different services. So theoretically, at the point where you get to 18, there's a continuation of that support plan. The other area that she's actually working on is actually to address the issues around those young people that are not in education, employment or training, which is a key sort of metric which is reported back to central government. And what she's doing at the moment is working with the likes of Dan and his team, the Employment Service, around developing kind of access to supported internships and other forms of employment, as well as looking forensically at why the young people that are currently within the so-called NEET category, excuse me, are actually there. What opportunities are being missed on their journey, and what could have been done differently at that time, but also what that means for young people going through the system at this point. Okay. The other thing she's working on is to develop clearer guidance for both young people, parent carers and professionals around the whole PfA framework, and obviously that will come on the back of the work that she's doing to actually develop and improve the sort of review documentation and the EHCP format for PfA cohort. And all that is being done to actually address the issue about making sure that young people have a clear transition plan and the right support at the right time, but also to actually kind of ensure that young people have positive lived experiences through that journey. And that ultimately, those people that are supporting that young person, whether it be parent carers, professionals or others, will actually have a good understanding and access to valid, current information and support to actually enable them to provide the right support to that young person at that time. I'm going to pass over to Dan from the Employment Support Team to talk about some of the work that he's doing.
So I'm going to talk about the aspects of PfA and employment that the Council is looking at the moment. So I'm Dan, I'm from the Council's Employment Support Team. As a service, we've been around for 30 years. Some of you might have heard of us before as City Limits Employment. We're now the Employment Support Team. So our belief is that anyone who wants to work can work and should be given the support to do that, provided it's the right support at the right time and in the right place for that individual. So our clients are at the heart of everything that we do. It's person-centred, one-to-one support that we offer, and it's a strengths-based approach. So we look at what people can do rather than what they can't do. Really in-depth service that we offer, and using the model of supported employment. I could talk about supported employment all day, but luckily for everyone, Michael said I've only got 6 minutes, so I won't. But as a quick overview, in case you don't know, the model of supported employment is kind of looking at a big part of getting to know the individual that we're working with. So every individual has an allocated employment officer, and it's the same person that will work with them throughout that journey. So they're not going to jump between different professionals, have to tell their story over and over again. We'll take that time, get to know the individual and what it is they want to achieve. So based on that, we'll look at vocational profiling, agreeing an action plan and supporting them along that journey. That could include CVs, applications, getting to know what their needs are and conveying that. And while that's going on, it's looking at, from the employer's perspective, what they need, looking at perhaps job carving, seeing what aspects of that particular employer role could carve out for our clients. So getting to know the job, helping to put the right worker together. So that goes with getting the right job, getting the right employer, and linking the two. And once somebody moves into work, it's not just a case of, right, see you later. We're still there, we'll support that individual. So providing in-work support, looking at reasonable adjustments, making sure that they're getting all of the support to actually retain employment and stay in work. And within that as well, then looking potentially, if that's what the client wants, at career development. So once they're in work, how they might want to progress. So it's start to finish a really nice model that we use. So within that, we've got several services that will support people with learning disabilities and neurodiverse conditions. So local supported employment, learning disability employment service, so to get into employment. They all use that model of supported employment, and will provide a similar service. It's just different names and things like that. But we kind of say, if you're interested, you need that support, just come and have a chat with us, approach us, and we will do our best to provide that support. We also do some work around supported internships. So we've been given some funding to put together a forum to raise the profile of supported internships, to actually make sure that they're seen as a viable pathway, just in exactly the same way as college or an apprenticeship or traineeship or anything else that's on offer. So we also will work with the providers, with employers, making sure that the quality of that provision is as good as it can be. We do actually, shameless plug for it, if anyone is interested in becoming a member of that forum. Our first meeting is going to be on Monday the 17th of April. It's going to be a Teams meeting as well, so you don't have to worry about coming to an office or a meeting place somewhere. And that's an opportunity. We want parents, carers, young people, we want employers, providers, anyone who has an interest in supported internships to come along, have your say, and help us to shape those employment pathways, because if we don't know what people are wanting, what people are needing, we can't then convey that back. So yeah, please do get involved. So very brief presentation from me, but I'll put my contact details up there. So we've got our website, Access Southampton, my email address and phone number, and we are on social media at the moment. So yeah, please don't worry about which eligibility criteria you meet or which project's right for you. Just come and have a chat with us, get in touch, and we'll help you work out what's going to be best and go from there.
Thank you, Dan. My turn. So, hi everyone, my name's Kate Dench. I'm a Senior Commissioning Manager in Southampton, and I've been working in Southampton since 2009, and I grew up in Southampton just down the road, and I said I used to come to Sunday school here, which was lovely back in the day. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a programme that we're calling Inclusive Lives. So we've co-produced this programme with a number of parent, carers and individuals with disabilities, and to really think about how do we want our city to be. And the premise is about inclusion, and really thinking about some of our key services, so whether that's the council providing them or other partners like health services providing them, or the council having influence over them, like the bus companies as an example, taxi companies, travel, employment, that we really think about how we support a more inclusive city, because that's one of the key things that can keep us all well and healthy. So what we want to do is ensure that our services and our support is as inclusive as it can be, and that means challenging each other and supporting each other, so that we just don't accept the status quo, and that we raise aspirations between us with each other for our young people, so that we've actually got the right support in place for people. So some of the things when we've spoken to people and we've said to them, what will good look like for you? Some of the things that they've come back and said, I can do things that I'm interested in close to my home with people that share the same interests as me. So, for example, it could be an interest in buses or trains or gardening or cooking, various different things. And actually they're sharing interests with other people who may not have disability, who may have those shared interests, but we harness the fact that they've got shared interests together and support them to spend time with each other and develop their own networks. I'm supported to make choices and to become more independent. Also, I'm supported to use the same community services that other people use in and around the same area that I live in. I'm supported to feel safe in my local community. We know that safety is one of those key areas that comes up time and time again, and we're really trying hard to make improvements in that area. I'm able to travel within my neighbourhood and the city with ease, and I'm supported to use technology to help me in my day-to-day life. I'm able to develop my employment skills and get a job, and I'm able to make friends and keep them. And this is what people have told us, what's important to them. And that's not always simple to put in place, because sometimes people can be unkind or unsupportive, or services can be barriered. They don't really want to listen about how they can change and make improvements. But our jobs collectively is to try and talk to services and get them to think in a different way. So, what we call Workstreams are key topics. What are we focusing on? So we're focusing on employment. You've already heard from Dan. We've got a specific area around, which Michael's spoken about, preparation for adulthood. So we're putting some money into posts so that we've got a stronger approach to how we support people that have got EHCPs and wider. Advice and information, it's been really weak for us in the city. We've got Claire Pritchard working with us, part of the Parent Carer Forum, and there's a lady in my team that's working with Claire, and again getting feedback from various individuals and co-producing some PFA preparation for adulthood guides. So we've already got the employment guide done, and we're working on the other 3 areas. So health is the next guide that we're currently developing. I've mentioned health and early intervention. We know that people with SEND have got poorer health outcomes, and we really need to change that. So I spoke to some families today about the fact that they could get an annual health check because they had a young person in year 10 and they didn't know about that. And annual health checks are available, so it's kind of just raising awareness and sharing some basic information. Having meaningful community opportunities, community safety. I don't know how many people have seen or heard, but Southampton has signed up as a city, has signed up to be a safe place, part of the National Safe Places Network, and we've now got 130 premises or businesses across the city that are signed up to be a safe place. If anyone wants more information, then speak to us down on the Preparation for Adulthood stand downstairs. But we're now doing some quality checking of those that have signed up, and we've got mystery shoppers going out and about. And in essence, it's a business that would sign up, and anyone that's feeling vulnerable, it could be me, it could be a child, it could be someone who views themselves as neurodiverse, anyone could go out and it's a safe haven for them. But there's more that we're doing around the community safety stuff as well. Access to skills and learning, and we know that we've got some more work to do around that, and as a commissioning authority, so as a council where we're spending quite a lot of money on services, we're starting to work with our providers more, particularly on the adult side, about skills and how we support people to continue their learning journey, and it doesn't just stop when you reach adulthood. There is one on digital. So we know, I know as a parent, I've got 2 boys, digital is part of life, isn't it? Digital is part of life. What we don't want is people to be excluded, and we see what a number of people that are excluded, because whether it's an online form, that isn't laid out very well, that isn't clear in terms of communication, or whether it's access to apps, whether it's access to be able to even fund broadband, phone, all of those things. So there's a whole range of things that we're trying to do around digital. We think it's an area that we want to invest some money in. So we have got linked to our neurodiversity hub that we're currently developing. We've got a little bit of money there, so we're going to test and pilot some digital tech. So that could be apps as an example, so that as people come into adulthood, they really understand what's available to them, and that we've got some opportunity of digital kit that they could use and try. Travel and transport solutions, we know we've got some big issues there. We know that we've got a real impact, particularly because of COVID, with our taxi companies and reliability and quality. But we're also talking about how we can support people around travel training. That might then link into pre-employment skills development as well. And how we can make sure that our transport network and travel network across the city, again, is inclusive. Our social work approaches and what we call processes, again, this links to some of the stuff that Michael's already talked about, so I won't go into that. Co-production, in essence, is about us listening. And again, it's that changing culture and changing how we think, because if we don't hear what people are telling us that is important to them, then we're just going to continue to deliver services that don't necessarily meet the need in the best way. And then direct payments is another area that we're quite early on. I don't know, Louise, you might be able to talk just a little bit about that in a minute. But something that we want to increase. So inclusion for us, we talk about terms around kind of equality and equity, but inclusion for us is really about designing things from the start that are fully inclusive, as opposed to putting in lots of additional measures that may well support equity, but our aim and our ambition is to really, really drive that inclusive approach within the city, and that means being a very supportive city to each other, but it also means that we challenge each other when we need to challenge each other, so that we listen. And so back over to Michael.
So in addition to some of the work that sort of Kate's leading on, we're also introducing a new sort of pilot that will run for the next sort of 12 months, commencing in April. It's being funded by an NHS England grant and is enabling us to actually employ 3 part-time community navigators. 2 of the people have already started last week, and they're actually downstairs, lovely Ellie and Eve, and we would hopefully have the 3rd person starting in April. And the purpose, although there's a very clear business case around what we need to be looking at over the course of the pilot, what we're wanting to do primarily is actually move away from the more traditional sort of method of assessing and planning for young people in going through sort of transitions, and actually look to work with that bigger cohort of young people that I mentioned earlier, where maybe they don't have kind of a lead professional from a sort of statutory service, and actually support both the young person, the people that are supporting that young person, whether it be parent carers or kind of other professionals, schools, Senkos, etc., to actually explore, navigate the system, to actually make the connections between the wealth of services that are being developed, some are already in place, some that are in the process of being developed, and actually ensure that people are getting the right support at the right time, at the right level. And so, although there will be some degree of crossover, the main focus will be actually working differently and actually moving away from that kind of notion that we need a Care Act assessment in order to actually develop a care and support plan. And central to that process will be adopting that person-centred, strengths-based approach, which kind of is very much a feature of what happens within children's services as part of the Strengthening Families programme, but is also happening much more across the board in adult social care as well. I just put this slide in briefly just to kind of really kind of emphasise this is about moving away from that deficit model of what people can't do and what's wrong, to actually recognising that everybody has strengths, skills, experiences, and actually looking to incorporate those and the support from within their networks, both within the families and the wider community, and the support and resource that's available in the community to actually enable that young person to be supported at a more proportionate level. It doesn't negate the entitlement to a Care Act assessment if that was needed, but what it does do is actually say, let's look at how we develop those support services locally, and going back to kind of a comment that kind of Kate made about almost place-based sort of support. So we're developing resources. So there's the Autism Hub that's being developed, that's being launched sometime in May, which is in the Bitton area, and that will enable young people within the eastern city to access that without actually having to transfer across one to the other side of the city. And the hope is that if that is a success, there may be a business case to develop that model going forward. To the pilot, there is some additional capacity being made by adult social care to address the issue of the timeliness and poor coordination of transitions from children's services to adult services. So that's where young people are actually known to a children's services team, such as the Jigsaw CWD team, and have been identified as needing a Care Act assessment and potentially post-18 support from one of the statutory services. Excuse me. And we're still in the process of recruiting to this place. So besides myself, who's got various other roles, I will be actually line supervising a social worker and an independent supervisor, which is effectively a social care worker. And these workers will be picking up the assessments that are required from a panel that we have that tracks the progress of young people through transition, and will be undertaking those Care Act assessments at the right point in the process. So we're aiming initially to have those assessments completed as close after the 17th birthday, so that where we've identified a need that requires a care and support plan post-18, that we're able to draft that and get approvals in place well before the 18th birthday, with a view to then passing that on to one of the other teams that's best placed to actually implement the plan. I think at this point I'm passing over to Louise, who is the service manager for the Social Wellbeing Service, one of those teams that my guys will work closely with.
Hi everyone. So I'm Louise, I'm the service manager for social wellbeing in adult social care. And my service area, we support adults, young people and adults that are referred to us through the Preparing for Adulthood panel. And also we get direct referrals in when people approach adult social care through our front door team, so that's Adult Social Care Connect, and they get referred to us. We do a really broad range of work, so we're working with young adults and young people who have autism and other neurodiverse conditions such as ADHD, but they don't have a diagnosed learning disability with it, and they don't perhaps need the specialist support of the adult mental health teams, and that's where we get involved. We do a really broad range of work. We support young adults from sort of 17, 18 upwards, all the way to the end of life. So we really do a broad, and the way that we're set up is that we have 3 hub teams here, which are West, Central and East, based on where the GP practice is in Southampton. So if you have a GP practice in the West and you make a referral and you come to us for some advice, information, possibly an assessment, it'll go to the West team, and equally Central and West. Then once we've done what we need to do, and actually we've supported and the needs are met and actually everything's stable, because of the number of people we help every year, we can't unfortunately work in a way where we're able to keep the same person allocated throughout. So once the person's got what they need and everything is good, we then transfer it to a review team. And we have to do approximately about 1,500 reviews a year to make sure that we can offer at least one review for somebody that's got long-term care and support plan in place. So it's a big number, and we really try and do what we can to make sure that we're supporting people appropriately. We'll aim to do what is needed for the young person to build a relationship with us. And that we can get the best in terms of doing an assessment. I think where experiences might have been difficult before is if it goes to another team prior to us, and there's but we're looking at better ways of working to make sure that actually we're there's less handoffs, less transfer between teams. Okay, we've got social workers and social care practitioners called independence advisors in our teams, and we will get some of the referrals will come through the Preparing for Adulthood panel that we've got. It's really working, it's really helping us to work closely together. It's really good to learn about young adults that have had EHCPs and that they're being supported with education and sort of like further educational opportunities. So we get to hear all about that. You might also be involved with CAMS, and then at that point there'll be a discussion about, well, does CAMS need to refer over to the adult mental health service for assessment? It's a slightly separate service to what we do, so it is again a different team, but there will be those discussions going on to see what is appropriate. My team and my service area will work much more closely with primary care, so we'll be linking in with the GP practice and primary care professionals at the surgery mainly, or wider clinics, specialist clinics, maybe for like diabetes, for epilepsy, for neurology at the hospital for certain conditions and things like that. That's sort of like how we have more contact in that way, because we're not an integrated team. It's much more just social care in my team. We might have young adults where actually the adult mental health service, like the specialist service, isn't needed at that point, but it has been recommended that perhaps they have talking therapy services, steps to wellbeing, IAPT, and there's obviously a bit more investment in trying to do early intervention. Now, I know that might be not necessarily suitable for all people depending on their needs, but sometimes we have those discussions about that might be where mental health support is tried first. We're all linked up following the strategies of the independent lives and obviously our strengths-based approach, which we're required to implement through the Care Act, which is our piece of social care legislation. So we'll be looking at everything that we can help our young people to tap into in the local neighbourhood, and resources like that are available in the local neighbourhood and in the community. We'll be also linking in with the supported employment team, looking at making sure that people are well aware of the opportunities for developing skills, voluntary work, employment opportunities in the future. And Solent Get Into Employment is one of the main ones because we're working with young people with that neurodiverse sort of conditions. Housing is also an issue, which I think I'm going to come on to, because I might just have a separate slide to make a point about that. And then we do assessments under the Care Act, assessments and care and support plans where people do have a need, where they meet the eligibility criteria. So there's currently one extra care scheme that was built by Southampton recently, which doesn't have a sort of a designated age criteria. That's Potter's Court. It's on the west side of the city. You might have heard about it. You might have seen some applications, and it's currently full at the moment. So if you're thinking about housing in the future, and it may not be yet. It might be actually sort of 10 years away or more. I can only advise that you just think about it early enough, perhaps to think about getting a housing register form done and supporting the young person to get onto the housing register. Because even if something more specialist is needed, a housing register form to identify a housing need is really, really important. And Patsy's going to come on to talk a bit more about that. But as people stay on the register, they actually accrue points every month that they're on it. And because it's sort of like a bidding process where it comes from the person when they're ready to decide about where they want to live and what property is being advertised, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a problem if somebody stays on the housing register and they stay on the housing register for quite some time. And lots of people have different sorts of needs, which will be prioritised about sort of what their priority levels are and if any additional priority can be awarded. So it's just a message really that there is quite a, within social housing, within what the council can offer, there is a lot of demand and there is quite a lot of pressure. So thinking for the future, actually this could be 10 years away or more, but getting that preparation in and preparing somebody to be added to the register if that's the need for the future is really, really important. And then I just wanted to say something about charging, because it's one of the areas that's such a big difference between children's social care and adult social care. is that when you receive social care as a child, and you might have short breaks package, you might have a sort of small direct payment for support, you might have a support worker coming to take people out to do some really nice things. That gets provided obviously for children and young people. But when you turn 18, when you are assessed for social care, there is a financial assessment process that comes along with it. If a young person's receiving such a sort of disability living allowance, for example, and then they move over to adult benefits, including the promoting independence payment hit, it is very much likely, if people need social care and they're assessed for that in the care and support plan, that there would be a financial assessment, and it's possibly likely that a financial contribution will need to be made. So it's just highlighting that that's an area of difference, and it can come as quite a shock to some parents and young people about the differences. So obviously we'll do our best to find a whole range of resources that's available that perhaps don't have a cost and, you know, can meet a need. But if something statutory from social care from the council is required, then there may be a contribution. But we also look at disability related expenses, DREs for short, it's in brackets, and that is on the form. So if there are additional costs related to the person's disability and their health needs, and then this can be added on to the assessment information, hopefully taken into consideration, and we can look at. I don't think there's necessarily a defined list. There's a section obviously on the form, isn't there, about, and some of these are quite individual. Oh, well, you can have two approaches. We look at the DREs individually at the moment as per the policy. So everyone that's got those expenses will provide some information and list them. Other local authorities might do a more standardised, we'll give you so much for this, and then if there's anything extra, take it into account.
And if you've got what you consider to be a DRE,
yes,
you go to the financial team?
You go to the FAB team to claim it initially. So you ask the FAB team for the form, you put the disability related expenses on the form, and often it does require just some proof of the cost. When that's submitted, they'll look at it, but they then send it to social care in order for us to, for a social care professional to assess and look at the need as well. So it's done jointly.
I'm really pleased that you highlight this, because it's what we get asked a lot for parents.
Yeah.
I can inform them because I've been through the 18 of it. It's a shock to me.
Yeah, it's
so
a big.
It's really good that it's being highlighted.
Yeah, I think we just need to make it really, really clear. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well done.
Okay, so that I was going to leave it there, not to go into too much detail, because I know Patsy and our services are really sort of closely linked, and she's going to go on to cover things in a bit more detail.
So we're a team that comes into play when someone is 17 or over and has a diagnosed learning disability. I think there's an formal IQ score of 70 or less. So Louise has already indicated that they have a large cohort of people that they work with. So we're a specialist team that work with that smaller cohort of people in the hope that we can provide that more specialist service. We're a service that has two teams. So we have one team, as in the learning disability team, that would work with individuals. I personally head up a specialist housing team. So Louise talked about housing generically, and I would echo her plea to get your young people on the housing register when they turn 18, so that they gather their points each month. But we also have some services within the city that are designated supported living properties for our individuals with learning disabilities. And I'm sure that's something we're going to build on in the future, and ideally make wider. So there's two teams. Each one has a team manager. There are some senior practitioners, qualified social workers who've been experienced for several years, social workers, and again our social care practitioners, independence advisors, exactly the same as Louise said. The team has the purpose and mission to enable adults to develop and maintain their own independence wherever possible, using a strength-based approach to ensure best outcomes. As Michael said, it's that lovely, there's an advert somewhere in there about taking the dis out of disability. because everybody can do something, everybody. So it's about identifying what that is, building on that and taking that forward. We work with lots and lots of agencies in the community, within our own services. So obviously there's internal teams and a variety of external teams. We personally would signpost to other agencies, so if we needed specialist LD health involvement, GP general health, we'd support that. We support everyone to get up with their annual health checks, as Kate mentioned. We provide lots of information, guidance and advice. We also do the Care Act assessments, as Louise's team would do, but with our specialist cohort. We recognise and work with families, informal and formal carers. And to tell you that's not lip service, it says it in our piece of legislation, that as carers you have the same rights to an assessment as the young people. So I say that with all sincerity. We facilitate direct payments. We co-work with our integrated care board colleagues, and particularly around individuals who might have a personal health budget. We do some work there. We also liaise very closely with our continuing healthcare colleagues and often work with them, particularly in my team, around their housing needs. We refer to life skills for people who want to get into employment. We've had some really exciting success stories there that we're very proud of. We refer for day opportunities, educational, vocational. We arrange respite provision. And just a point I wanted to make about the respite, it's the young person. So the young person would be entitled to benefits that they weren't previously, and that would be the income that's assessed for the financial assessment. So we work to enable transitions from children's services to adult services. So we're active on the preparation for adulthood panel, so we can hear about young people coming up. We respond to carers' needs, assist with supported accommodation. We do work sometimes with our shared lives carers, who are absolutely fabulous in Southampton. They offer a really amazing service. So that's about young people going to live in a family home type setting, with the kind of aim to further develop independence before we look at entirely living independently, perhaps. Some individuals do live in residential placements, so we may be involved in that to some degree. We work to obviously safeguard and protect adults who are vulnerable and at risk of harm, and we're involved in the creation of the new supported living schemes in the city. There is a list of some of the other people we work with within the city, and the LD team are, we're going to be a little bit innovative, and we're going to have an allocated worker model. So a point you made earlier about not having that consistent worker, not having that opportunity to build those relationships, not having the social workers having the opportunity to come in a year's time and really understand the story that led to that. We're going to be working in an allocated model way. So once allocated, wherever possible, that would be your allocated social worker who would do that assessment, work with the individual. It may be that we're not always visible in that person's life. There may be a bit of time, but perhaps where everything's fine, and then it would be that same worker coming back to do the reviews. I think that is my last slide, isn't it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.